PJ from More Game Gumbo. I've got my guest here, Liz Davidson. And Steve, we've been beating around the bush, but we really need to talk about this game. I want to tell you something, Liz, that you don't know. Steve has been talking about this game since the very first time it was announced. And of course, I'm talking about Night Witches. This is not the actual game itself, but this is the only sneak peek that Kevin has on the BGG page. So Liz, tell us about Night Witches. What a cool theme.
Yeah, David Thompson and I had been kind of joking about doing a game together for a while. Like, we became friends because he did Pavlov's House. I reviewed it. I liked it. I interviewed him. And then it turned out that we were like the only people who are awake at 4 a.m. on a regular basis, just very early morning people. And so we've just kind of become friends over the years. And we kind of joked about designing a game together. And like, this was one of the themes that we'd both been attracted to. And then we decided to really do it. So actually the first announcement that we were going to work on it at all was on my podcast, like not this past July, but the one before. And that was our first official conversation about the game because we wanted to really make the whole process super open. So I have an old demo on my channel of like a very early version of the game. It's developed a bit since then, so I may actually do another TTS video soon. David and I have talked to Jason Morningstar about it. Mike Kelly has interviewed us. Basically, my podcast is where a lot of stuff about the game comes out because, we're just it's talking about it on my outlet, I guess.
Well, I will tell you, if anybody is interested, go check out that interview that Liz did with David and Jason. It's a fantastic interview. It really is, Liz.
Agreed.
You did a good job.
Appreciate it. I'm actually really proud of my podcast. I think it's probably the best thing that I do, other than maybe someday game design.
Does Panda Angel have to listen to it in the morning, or can Panda Angel wait to listen to your podcast like around dinner time?
So the best thing about podcasts is you can listen to them whenever you want.
Anytime, right?
Sure.
We wanted to make Night Witches something that was both a solo experience and like a 2-player co-op. So yeah, that's the Bully Pulpit Night Witches.
And this is not the board game, people. This is chat crew. This is the Bully Pulpit RPG, if I remember right. That's right.
That's correct. Yeah, it's an RPG.
But it does have the artwork, and I'm assuming the flavor that. Did you draw any inspiration from the RPG?
No, we didn't touch it at all while we were designing it, and we have a very different aesthetic goal for the game. So I'll say more when our artist actually does some work. But we will be doing our own thing, as it were. But I really, really appreciate Jason Morningstar's work, and he's a really thoughtful and interesting designer in his own right. So I'm glad that we both share a passion for the Night Witches because they're just cool.
Is this an actual photo of the Night Witch?
Yeah, I mean, it's colorized, but yeah. But yeah, we basically wanted to make a game that you could also play 2-player co-op, so that maybe somebody can play with like a daughter or a friend, and kind of get things, get more people into gaming. We wanted to design a light, accessible war game that would help people get into historical gaming and have a good experience with it. And so hopefully we're succeeding there.
What about the theme attracted you?
I was really interested in the way that the women talked about themselves. So we talked to our historical consultant, Raina Pennington, and we actually had some qualms about calling the game Night Witches at all, because that was what the women did not actually like being called. They were like, well, what do you want to be called? Just pilots. We're just pilots. They weren't really interested in like these larger narratives about like, oh, but you're women pilots or anything like that. They're like, no, we had a skill. We did a job. We served our country. Like, that's what we did. And we want people to remember and appreciate that. So I wanted to kind of give that treatment to the subject. And also we thought that doing like an aerial, like an aviation game might be really, really fun. So we came up with, we wanted to maybe do like a bag builder was the original concept. So now we've got a game where you're kind of flying over this hex map and you don't actually know what's underneath you until you get close enough. So you have to pull from an observation bag to see what you've encountered. Ooh. And then you have to deal with it. So it's a little bit different every time. We've got it at scaling difficulties. So depending on how well you're doing, you might have to play with like the very spicy bag. But if you're struggling with that, you get bumped down to the normal bag.
Little cayenne in that bag there, Steve. Got to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got like a little short campaign that you can also play individual missions from. We basically wanted to really serve people who enjoy historical games and war games, or who might be curious about them, but who are intimidated by the length, or who are intimidated by like too much rules overhead. And we wanted to create something that was much more streamlined as we could get it, and then also did not, I guess, hog up too much time We wanted something that was like respectful of the fact that the people who are playing it, you know.
Time Roller checking in. Hey, Tommy, we're talking with Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire about Night Witches. She's telling us a little bit about the background about how Night Witches kind of came into fruition and some of the mechanics. But is this going to be a game that where the mechanics are going to kind of drive the theme, or is the theme inspiring you at all, kind of bubbling in the brain about how the mechanics want to come out?
Well, we started with a theme, and then wanted to find mechanisms that would match how we wanted the game to feel. I think when you're doing a historical game, you have to be thinking about what it is about the history that you want to represent, and so that should drive the mechanisms that you choose. I'm not a big pasted on theme person. That's not what I prefer in my games, especially I think as a solo gamer. I mean, occasionally I like something puzzly, but I'm very, very interested in historical games and how games can be used to express history, and so. You know, is this a perfectly historical game? Absolutely not. We had to align too much to make it very light, you know, to make it the right weight. However, it was really important to us to at least simulate some of the feeling of being a Night Witch. And so that's why that bag building element is there. We want you to feel the anxiety of what you're flying over and wondering how it's going to go. The same thing for bombing and evading. You have to draw from a bag. You don't actually know if you're going to succeed in all the things that you're doing. And then we also have very short recovery times between sorties on each mission that simulate the Night Witches having to go back and get refueled, get more bombs, maybe like chug some tea and like head right back out. So
right back out, right.
Yeah, these women were flying in extremely dangerous conditions. They had no radar. They had no radios. They did not have guns. Like, there are no machine guns on these planes. It's just these rickety little canvas wing planes with a couple bombs on them. And so they fly out there, and you know they have to drop the bombs. It's like mostly harassment missions, honestly. Like, these are not fighter pilots, although there was a women's fighter pilot unit as well in the Russian, the Soviet Air Force at this time. But they would go back, they would get refueled, and they would immediately go out and do it again. And like, they were competitive with the men's unit next door, basically sharing the same airfield a lot of the time, that was doing the same job in the same planes. So like, we think like, oh, there's a narrative like these women got these crappy planes because they were women. Actually, the Russian Air Force at this time, the Soviet Air Force, had some issues, and that, you know, a bunch of its planes had been destroyed. So they were doing the best with what they had, and so men and women were both flying these kind of trainer aircraft and just doing what they could. So the Night Witches their job was basically to be annoying and keep the Nazis awake. And so the game is not about just repetitive sorties, right? But we wanted to create some of the tension of that by like forcing a little bit of choice in how you allocate your time overnight.
I did like how they came up with the nickname, though. They would just fly really low since they don't have radar, they don't have any protection. They're flying really low, and they come screaming in the dead of the night.
Oh, no screaming, actually. What they did was they cut the engine. So they would basically get close to target, they would cut the engine, and they would glide really silently over the target. Then you drop the bombs, start the engine, and bail. Because
it was the Germans that were screaming, basically, I guess. Yeah.
Well, actually, Night Witches is their name for these women, actually, the Noctexan.
Right.
So
that would be just terrifying, Steve. You know, you're sitting there, you don't even know what's about to come, and then all of a sudden this biplane comes right over you and drops a bomb. And then
BJ's right about this. This has been on my radar for a while because I was reading a book by Kate Quinn called The Huntress, which is a historical fiction book at the same time that we had Kevin and Tori on. And they were talking about the upcoming, you know, slate of games, and they mentioned Night Witches. I said, "Wait, I'm sorry. I was like, say what now? Would you run that again?"
What attracts you to this game? Or
I'm
to
very
theme,
interested. The theme was the story. Again, I thought that what Liz had on the podcast was really good because you had the comparison of the RPG, which was more about the stories of the women's lives between missions and such. And this is more going to be the sorties that they're doing. That really intrigued me. The idea of a 2-player co-op game intrigued me. I'm curious about the mechanisms. I can't wait to see more about this. Are the 2 players going to be both pilots, or are they going to be pilot and navigator of the same?
No, basically, each plane, we're just assuming a pilot and navigator, so each player will control one aircraft, one crew, essentially. And actually, the way you can lose the game is once we have an artist. Please, Kevin, book the artist. We are going to we've requested some crew cards that like depict a pilot and a navigator together, like maybe working on the plane, you know, maybe just kind of hanging out. But you know, looking happy and friendly and excited. And then when you crash your plane, you have to discard that card and then get a new one.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah.
And then when you run out of cards, you've lost the game because you're out of cruise. Like you killed them all.
Right.
Good job.
You know that I like that. I mean, you're integrating what's really going on in this wartime into some pretty cool mechanics, Steve.
Yeah, not everybody comes back.
Not everybody comes back. Yeah, it's hitting its historical, but still you're still gamifying. So at the end of the day, you can put it away and maybe get some sleep at night. But I do like what I'm hearing about that. What's the timeline for you and Fort Circle Games?
So David and I are being good. The game is basically designed. The rule book is basically written, and we are about to email a bunch of playtesters and like have people make sure that there's nothing seriously wrong with what we've done. We are hoping to spend a few months doing that and be done kind of early in 2024, and then it's up to Kevin.
Well, I know
Blame
a playtester in New York City that would probably help you out. You know. No, but back to Kevin. What's it like working with Fort Circle Games? We really enjoyed our visit with Kevin and Tori, man.
Oh, it's great. I love Kevin. The reason that we wanted to go with Fort Circle for this game was that we wanted it to be specifically positioned as a historical game in that space, but we also wanted really good production values. And Kevin just really, really cares about the games that he publishes. He is a perfectionist. He hires a copy editor for the rule books. He is letting us have a lot of input, even though he's been our publisher since like April. You know, he's really let David and me take the lead with how we want to run things and how we want to develop the game. And he is just a really nice, respectful person who cares about us kind of realizing our vision for the game and then making it as good as he can possibly make it on his end. And so we went with him because we trust him to love the game and to promote the game and to not just do like one print run and be like, oh, well, you know what I mean? Like we wanted somebody who was going to love Night Witches as much as we do.
Steve, when I first opened up the Shores of Tripoli, the box is so thick. And then it satisfyingly kind of eases up. And then you see this historical letter. It's been a few years, Liz. I'm going to get this wrong, but it's like a historical letter from Thomas Jefferson, if I remember right, writing about or maybe it's somebody to Thomas Jefferson writing about the pirates. And I mean, it's like instantly I'm into the theme. And then you start opening up the components and they're big, chunky, thick wooden pieces, and the board is gorgeous. The gameplay is great, and the rule book practically teaches the game, you know, with ease. Same thing with Votes for Women. I mean, Votes for Women, what a great production! And instead of one historical document, there's like 30 in that box.
Yes, very immersive.
Yes, actually, we have a historical consultant who's going to be helping us on Night Witches, like translate and select
some of those
documents.
We're going to see some little documents in there.
There's going to be some little documents, yes. Yeah. And then, so this is mostly me joking, but I'm kind of serious. If I can get Kevin to let us put a balsa wood plane in there, I'm just going to die of joy. I don't know if it's really going to happen.
I used to build those, Steve, Liz.
That's my fantasy.
Balsa wood kits.
Can we put a toy in there?
Oh, man. Wow, that would be exciting. You never know. You heard it here first. It might be something we see.
Who knows? But I'm absolutely childish enough to want such things.
Yep. And I'm thinking 24. Man, I'm gonna have to start budgeting already because this is a game I definitely see. I'm juiced up about it now. This is something I definitely want to play. And I like really good quality 2-player games. There are a lot, but maybe not so much on the scale that we're talking about. These beautiful, really well-produced games. Steve and I talk about Targi a lot. We talk about a lot of the little simple 20, 30-minute games. What kind of time frame are we talking about here, Liz? What's the play time?
Oh, short. So if you're playing this by yourself, you can absolutely do a mission in 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
If you are playing with 2 people, maybe 30. And you could probably get through the entire campaign in a long afternoon. So the goal for this is for it to not wear out its welcome. Especially because there's replayability because every mission is going to come out different because you don't know what's going to come out of the bag. Right. We're actually also hoping to include blank maps of each size map in the game. There's like a small one and then a large one after the planes get upgraded partway through the war. And so we are also going to put blanks in there. We're kind of hoping that people who enjoy the game will also send us some challenges to try.
I like that. Some user-created content like the old D&D maps. Nice. And
why not, right? Like, I'm not going to be the smartest person who comes up with the mission. Like, it'll be the collective play. So,
What's it like working with David Thompson? How's that going? Is this like a in-person type thing, or are we
It's
internet
online.
doing it online? Yeah.
So our friendship is now destroyed. No, I'm kidding. That's not true at all. No, actually, David and I are probably better friends because we design together. So I will say it's both wonderful because David and I have a similar working style, and because David's a wonderful person. We both like to get up early, so that's what we do. Like, we get up early. We have some crazy early meeting. We designed everything in Tabletop Simulator, and we basically just communicated really well through the whole process. And before ending each meeting, we set another meeting and gave like some sort of conjecture of what we would do by the next meeting, so that way we stayed on track. And the other thing is that, this is my first design, but it's obviously not David's. Like, wow. So I really appreciated during this process that it still was a very 50-50 process. David is an actual partner, as opposed to, like, he could absolutely have kind of overruled me or pushed me a little bit because I would trust him because he would know more than I would. But instead, we ended up having this really fun, like a true partnership where we really went back and forth. And, the game is funny to me because you can see little bits of each of us in the game, but you also can no longer fully tell who's who.
Right.
And so it's like a full, like, if we had a child that was a game, it would be and so like, I've been joking. It's been such a good process. Like, I've made this joke before, but I've been like, my night witches would never cry at a restaurant. Like, my little night witches would like never hear. So I'm just being tempted to like make more games by like how nice this experience has been.
Oh yeah, I would say, it sounds like, I hope you're certainly not being ruined by the first wonderful experience working with David.
Oh no, actually, I'm also working.
It's just inspiring you to do more.
I dropped this on my podcast, so I can say it here now. Ricky Royal and I are working on something together for Oath, and that's been really delightful. And I'm working on my own game about Nero's mom trying to both maintain political power and survive during the first 5 years of her son's imperial rule. So that's what I'm up to.
If he had only listened to her, because she kept saying, "Stop fiddling around with that. Stop."
Exactly. But no, actually, you're more on point than you would think. Agrippina was politically experienced. She's extremely powerful. She knew what she was doing. She had incredible international connections. She had incredible relationships built up in the Senate with the Praetorian Guard. And her son was a 17-year-old little turd who wanted to like divorce his wife, who was important to his dynastic ambitions, and be an actor in Rhodes. Like, the fool. So yeah, he eventually tried to murder her with a party boat and failed. Like, he literally put her on a collapsible boat because he didn't have the nerve to just stab her already. So then it failed. She swam to shore and lived. And then he sent people over to finally stab her, and she allegedly pointed at her like womb and said, "Stab me right here, because this is the womb that bore Nero," and like went out like a chant. So
Wow.
That is a great story. I'm not so sure I'm hearing game though, Steve.
Well, the game itself is about trying not to get to this point in your relationship with your child.
I know. Like, this is interesting for the textbook, but I don't know about the game. But no,
I love the fact that win conditions rather than stab conditions.
Yeah, exactly. Stab conditions.
Oh, those are stab conditions. It's always a positive conditions for a stabbing. If I'm here,
Here you go.
It's a stabby.
Hearing about that.
No, I can't wait to hear that. But I all games in ancient history, I'm always into that. So I want to hear more about this one. So keep us posted on that. Right. Was there anything, and hopefully that's not something like a spoiler or anything, but is there anything that you learned about the Night Witches themselves that you didn't know that was just so cool you're just bursting to tell everybody in this game? Is there anything?
I mean, there's just so many little things about them that are cool. I mean, I really wanted to put an emphasis on how capable and serious they all really were, just because I think that's how they wanted to be remembered. It actually makes me really sad that they, Raina Pennington, again, our historical consultant, actually conducted interviews with a lot of them. If you want to learn like the full treasure trove of cool stuff, her book, Wings, Women, and War, is excellent. But I think my favorite part about this particular group, the Night Witches, is that they're the only unit that stays all female throughout the war, and they're proud of it. The other two female units became integrated. But there was one guy that like tried to hang out with the Night Witches for a while, but they sent women's underwear to him, and he just couldn't handle it and quit.
That's a great way to end the discussion of Night Witches, coming out with Fort Circle games. Hopefully we'll see it crowdfunding sometime next year.
Yeah. hopefully
we're crossing our
2024,
fingers on
barring a disaster.
Yeah, we're crossing your fingers that we get that artist that you really, really want.